Hi students, welcome to HSC Earth and Environmental Science and Module 8 Resource Management. This is video number 9. We're going to start our little look at waste management. Particularly, we're going to discuss some of the practical things that you might be doing in terms of a waste audit in your home or in your school. As I said, this is the beginning of the second inquiry question or the second section in our study of resource management, and we're specifically focusing in this section on waste management. Always worth starting each of our units with a bit of a brainstorm on how waste is managed, and you can use a little thinking routine, generate, sort, connect, elaborate to get started on what you already know about waste management, what if any recycling you might do in your own home and how you work that, and also therefore what actual solid waste would you estimate you produce each year. And we're going to be looking specifically at how we calculate that, doing a bit of an audit in this particular video. So our learning goal for this particular video is for you to conduct a practical investigation of the composition of household or organizational waste. Now obviously on this video we're not going to conduct a practical investigation, and this is something that you can either do with your own home garbage bin or with bins at an organization like a school. And that's something that we're going to be actually doing together as a group in class. But it is something that's important, and it is something where we need to kind of get a bit of an idea of A, why it's important, and B, how we're going to organise this waste audit as we go through. And that's going to be the subject of this video. Household waste is obviously a significant issue. In general terms, waste is just discarded and unwanted material, but it has a major effect on the environment. And therefore, the way that we manage wastes is vital to the health of both natural systems and human-influenced ecosystems. Some types of waste that are generated by humans are a little more manageable than others. And therefore, we have a number of different organisations that are involved in the collection and processing of some of the waste that we discard. When you look at some of the largest threats to wildlife, and also whenever you're looking at statistics like this, you need to be aware of the fact that these are going to change year by year, and always worth having a little bit of a look at how recent any data was. But if we're going to look at a graph like this, one of the things that we need to do now is to start to zero in on some of the key areas that are contributing to some of the threats that we humans are having on the native wildlife. And pollution is number 5 on this particular list of things that contribute to threats to wildlife. And you can see, despite urban development being up at number 3, where we're talking about housing, tourism, industrial production, it's not until we get to number 5 and we start talking specifically about pollution where we start to think about some of the domestic waste, some of the stuff that we just throw away. Unfortunately, in my lifetime, I've seen us shift particularly from, I guess, being a little bit more conscious of the sorts of materials that we had, to seeing this massive influx in plastic packaging and just a huge discarding of that sort of level of solid plastic waste. And then a little shift again as we start to get a little bit more conscious of exactly how much plastic we were putting into our environments. And so you would know that there's been a lot of campaigns recently to remove plastic bags from shopping centres, for example, from supermarkets, and to reduce our reliance on plastic bags almost completely. And we are trying to do that. So there are certain activities that are part of our approach to managing and potentially minimising some of our solid waste. So it would be fair to say, I think, that waste is one of the biggest environmental issues that we faced. In its various forms, it's one of the drivers of biodiversity losses, and we saw that from the previous graph. The problem that we have is as human populations grow, our waste continues to grow, and we're running out of places to put it, basically. Recycling programs are making some difference, but they're not enough to stem the present tide. So what we really need to do is we need to study waste management, we need to study the types of waste, and we need to create waste profiles. So one of the ways that we can do that is through a waste audit. So in this particular graphic, you can see a few years, not the most recent years coming up, but some of the categories of household waste that we're generating. And of course, the problem with the vertical scale here is it's in million tons. So this is massive stuff. Organic waste dominates this particular graphic. You can see a huge amount of what we throw away is food scraps, that sort of types of wastes. We do discard papers and cardboard, and in the area that I live in, there is paper and cardboard are collected as part of our recycling every second week. But the problem is that we don't separate any of those. In the recycling bin, I also put plastics and I put in glass as well. So all of these sorts of things come and get collected as part of my recycling. Perhaps if I've got some aluminium cans, they might even go in there as well. So recycling covers a large number of these, and in the area that I live in Port Stephens, organic waste or green waste is not collected separately. So if I mow the lawn and collect the grass clippings, they just go in the same bin as the general waste. Same thing with my food scraps and so on. So I am not through the provided systems recycling any of those materials or using them for any sort of other purposes other than to go out in solid waste, unless of course I initiate certain processes in my own home. And this is one of the things that we're going to look at in terms of what is it that we can do as individuals to try and think about our waste profiles or our waste footprints and the impact of what we are throwing away, what the impact of that is on the environment. So one of the advantages of waste audits is they help us work out exactly how much waste we are creating, exactly how big the problem is. And this is one of the reasons why audits, we often avoid them because they do tell us information that we don't necessarily want to know. But what they do also tell us is exactly how big the problem is, and also what sort of measures we might be able to use in order to combat them, at least in small steps, if not in large steps, to try and reduce our waste footprints. So we're going to have a look at this in the school. And as I said at the beginning, you can also do this in your own domestic waste at home. This is kind of like a survey. It involves tipping out a bin full of waste onto a plastic container or a tarpaulin or something like that. It could even go straight onto the oval, depending on the sort of wastes that you're looking at. And we then try and separate that waste using being well protected with gloves, eye protection, and probably a lab coat in order to protect ourselves from the material. We want to make sure that we're also probably using something like tongs to pick things up and try and classify that into a range of different types of forms of waste. So we're going to look at organic waste. So our food scraps would be examples of organic waste, where people have just thrown food away, half-eaten food, or perhaps even food they didn't particularly want. Any of our recyclables, so we'll just try and link all of these together, but you could subdivide these depending on how specific you wanted to be in your waste audit. So that could be paper and cardboard, it could be plastics, it could be metals, for example, and these are all areas where we might be able to look at some of the different types of things that are going to be able to be potentially recycled. And then what we're going to I guess, look at our last category is just the general solid waste, which is basically anything that doesn't fit into any of these other categories. So this is our kind of overview of our school waste audit. We are going to carry one of these out in class, and I hope you'll have the opportunity to do that too. You can also do that, of course, in your own home, and it's very important that you think personally about your own waste footprint, what sort of things you are recycling, what sort of things you are putting in that are just going to contribute to landfill. We will have a little bit more of a talk about what's actually happening to a lot of this solid waste, but we'll do that in future videos. Thanks for watching.